So this is the summer getaway motif, and we're going to start by making our ocean a fabulous bright turquoise color. So you're welcome to make your ocean whatever color you want. And I'm just kind of coming along here and moving. This will be outside the frame line. I'm just kind of moving my brush in a little bit of a rick-rack motion where I'm connecting some of these lines and not connecting them. You can always go and kind of do a little bit of a squiggle, and then you can come back and touch the paint together just to make sure that you have something that looks a little like the ocean waves where they break, and you want it to be horizontal, of course, because that's the way the ocean goes. Can't believe how many people try to do this. So we'll want to come in here and sort of define some of those lines. I've got a different color blue here. You can use whatever color you've got at home, or if you want your ocean to be more of a blue color, that's fine. Just keep in mind that you'll have a sky to do, so it's good to sort of have a little bit of a different color blue there. Now, I lost a lot of my white in this, and that's okay too. So I'll get around that tree a little bit in our design. So this is my woodland set, and I've got a good sand color. Sometimes in the tropicals, I use like a coconut with a tiny bit of tiki, which is a brown color. We just want to be careful along this line here where the sand and the water meet that we don't mix those two. It'll turn into kind of a green. And so we'll just kind of come in here and sort of wash. I do have dry paper and I'm putting wet paint on it, but you could, if you want to, put a thin layer of water down first like we will for the sky. Getting underneath my little house here, my little beach house. Okay, I left a little white of the paper there, that's fine. And I can come in here and do the same kind of thing with the sand path. Trying to make it look a little bit less overall and a little more detailed here. I can go back and kind of combine those in a second. Getting a little bit of texture. So if we leave those lines here and then we take a clear brush and just sort of swipe over this, it'll pick up some of the pigment. It won't take all of it. It'll still leave the texture, but you saw it just fills that in. So then you can always come in here and kind of hide some of the pencil lines if you want to. You can always take like a gray, just come in here, or if you wanted it to look a little green, like maybe some vegetation was popping through, that's fine too. Okay, so we're going to let that dry for a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to start working on my palm tree. So I mixed up a green over here, and I'm doing this pretty simply. I am leaving a little bit of the white of the paper in here. This is a fun, whimsical drawing, and I'm not trying to get too realistic here. And I can add a little bit of this brown to it just to kind of add dimension. See, people would usually panic about that space right there. I would probably just leave it and not worry about it, but you can pull it back if you need to. Don't fear. Or you can always just draw in another palm frond and hide any mistakes you may have felt you made. And I'm going to come in here and do a little bit of these coconuts. And I'm doing this pattern on the tree. And then taking a very light wash of the same thing. And I'll probably go back over that before I'm done and get those V marks in there. Up here. It was pretty heavy, so I'm going to pull some of that pigment that I put in here over to the other palm leaves, like so. I'm really going quick, so I apologize for going outside of the lines, but you can take your good old time. I have this shadow color in here. It's more of a gray black, so if you have a true black, you might want to really put enough water in there. I have a little green in my brush, so it's kind of a little green here. Now this is darker than my reference, so I'm gonna probably pull that back a little bit. And I'm just gonna, on this one, do an overall, and then I'll let that dry and then put some markings for the roof. And I just made up this little house, so my drawing isn't as perfect as probably it should be. But then I come in here. So if you're wondering what's the floor, what's the door, so sorry. Might not be as easy to tell as it ought to be. Okay, and I'm actually going to come in here and kind of, well, I've got that in my hand, and sort of put a little shadow on top of my sand here, representing the shadow under the house. I'm going to do a little darker. I have like a white house with some gray accents, and I did a class once, and the ladies all did their own fabulous designs. There was a purple house and a turquoise house, and it was a ton of fun. On this one, I did a yellow door just to pop in some color here, make it look beachy. Tone that back a little bit, put some water in here, and I'm leaving white of the paper in there a little bit to demonstrate a reflection on the glass. If you fill it in solid, it just doesn't read that way. I'm leaving the porch and just coming across kind of every other one. I think that works out best. I kind of have the last step of color, so I would do that maybe first and go up the line, just like so. And I think I'll come in here. Oh, that's so funny. I forgot to do the sand between each of these, so I'll definitely have to come back in there when that's dry and fill the sand in. So this is kind of a gray brown wood. You could make yours all white if you want, but it's not as fun. But it might be exactly what you want your picture to look like. So now it's time we'll come in here and kind of lay out. I'm going to try doing some, it's a fat line to try to get a tiny little fine line. If you're going to, you just want to make sure there's not like a bubble of water at the end of your brush. There's pigment and not a ton of water. And we'll just do, you can't see that very good, can you? Well, it's hard for me to do a fine line without being over my brush, but I'm going to come in here and kind of do the look of maybe shingles on this roof. And then going every other one. Like that. And I think I want to go under the eave here. Wow, that was a lot. I don't know why my brush is a lot of water distributed here. Like so. I'm going to put in a few little accents here. Try to be a little more careful than I'm being here. And you can see I've got little mistakes here and there, but from a distance you won't even see that. And kind of come in here and sort of put some shadows. And as I promised, we'll come and get our palm tree. Texturized here. And going to kind of redefine this waterline here and put a little bit of extra detail. So now we're ready to do our sky. And I'm going to put a thin layer of just water, kind of going around that just basically for now. And kind of hop, skip, jumping around here because there will be clouds, so I don't need to fill that all in. And then I'm using this blue and I'm just putting, I want to get that bottom line here. Want this to look right to left. There's a blue sky, and then there's some places where there could be clouds, and I'm depositing some extra blue in here. And then now I want to make sure to get around the house really good so it's not separated. And so that these two kind of match, I'm putting more pigment into this area here. Being really careful around my palm tree, making sure it's nice and dry. That's way too much pigment, so I'm going to move that pigment around. And I'll just kind of redistribute some of that so it's not so stark. And I'm using that space where there was no water and the stuff is pulling around it, the pigment is pulling around it as a imaginary cloud. So